Family, is TBay82 coming in quickly to talk about trimming locks. Last night I posted a picture on Instagram showing my new trim that I recently did. If you're not following me on Instagram, my username is TBay82, the same as it is on this channel, so you can go and check that out. I got a lot of questions about trimming locks. Basically, why do I do it? First off, not everyone has to trim their locks, so it's not something that's a required maintenance step when you have locks. I personally trim my locks probably once a year. It can even be longer than that because I style my hair in the same hairstyle very often, and I do two-strand twists or braids, and I use rubber bands at the end. So the elastic bands, the small black elastic bands, they can cause damage to the ends of your locks. A lot of people don't really talk much about it, but it does. It can cause them to fray. And like if you have sealed ends, it can cause them to fray and come unraveled and promote those little curls at the ends, or make thin spots in your locks if you use them, higher up on your hair. And that does happen to me. So that, plus the fact that I do color my hair once a year, and well, once or twice a year actually, and the fact that I like my locks to be very even are the reasons why I trim my locks. So just because I do it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a requirement for everyone. Some people will never, ever, ever need to trim their locks. But if you are a person like me who uses a lot of rubber bands when styling, or if you do color your hair often, you may want to consider trimming your hair every now and then. Basically, the way I do it is I just take a pair of hair shears, and my daughter pretty much helps me. We just go row by row, and we just do a blunt cut straight across, evening out each row individually. So my hair's not necessarily all the same length, but it's pretty even throughout. So it's pretty uniform in the back. It has kind of a layered effect at the very ends, but they're pretty even going based on each row, not necessarily on the length. Now, a professional loctician or stylist may have a much better way of trimming locks. Obviously, I don't have a license, and I do this at home myself. So, it might be different if you go to the hair salon. But what I've noticed is, even though my ends are very blunt, and I'll just bring them forward so you can see, they're very, very blunt at the end for when you recently cut them. Like very square. But over here you can see the same thing. But over time, from palm rolling, and if you use rubber bands or braided styles, they'll eventually round back out. And they typically do that within a few months. Like, I can't even remember how long it takes because it happens every time. So it does end up getting that very round look fairly quickly, especially if you palm roll your locks to the ends like I do. So it's not something that really concerns me about them being so blunt. I hope I talked about all the reasons for trimming your locks. Also, a good reason to trim locks is if you have your hair for a very long time. Like, I would not recommend really trimming your locks unless you've had your locks for at least like 2 years or 3 years even. Because when you trim them, if they're not completely locked, they can unravel. So you really don't want to trim locks that are younger than that. So if you decide that maybe you have locks that are only 2 years and you want to cut for like a style, I'd recommend going like to a loctician or a stylist to get that done, because I really wouldn't recommend doing that at home because your hair is still not locked. And the longer you had your locks, the hair at the ends is like the oldest hair. Like, I had my locks for 7 years, so all this hair down here is at least 5 or 6 years old. So it's like, yeah, sometimes it needs to be trimmed, especially when you color your hair in the back. Like, sometimes the color, like if you're going lighter or you're doing a color that you typically don't use in your hair, when you do it in the back on the older hair, sometimes it doesn't color as well. So you'll see different shades within the lock, especially on the older hair, because I guess it's not as porous any longer, or I really don't know what happens, but you will also see that the color isn't taking as well as it does at the root. So that may be another reason to consider trimming your locks. And also with color, you will see some damage as well. Like the darker portion of my hair, I don't really see much damage, but the blonder portion, whenever I color it, the ends do unravel a bit also. because the lightening process, I mean, I don't use actual bleach, but I do believe that when you go into the blonde family, the booster that comes in a lot of the box color does contain some type of bleach or hair lightener, and it does loosen up my curl pattern anyway. It may not do that for everyone, but I do notice damage, especially towards the end of the locks, and a little bit of weakening in the areas. So that's another reason why I do trim my locks. So these are really the only reasons that you should trim your locks, unless you want it done for a style. And if I missed any questions that you may have had, just put them in the comments below and I'll make sure I answer them. Until next time, peace.